Hi everybody, I'm at a coffee shop in Trinidad today and I wanted to make a few comments about the readings for this section. A lot of Christians think that legal material in the Old Testament is really boring and not applicable, but I'd like to make a case that we can learn a lot from this material. And as a matter of fact, since several of you are really interested in the ecological conversation we've been having, I'll point out two texts that are not assigned but you might be interested in, and that is in Deuteronomy 20 verses 19 to 20. There's some very interesting material about preservation of trees during wartime that you might find interesting, and then a couple of chapters later, Deuteronomy 22 verses 6 and 7, is information about the preservation of mother birds. You can take eggs, but you can't take the mother with them so that she's still available to reproduce. So anyway, that's a little side note. But on the legal material, the Mary Douglas article, she's an anthropologist who's really influenced the way a lot of biblical scholars read the material. She argues that we can really find justice at the center of the material in Leviticus, right in the middle of the holiness code, and I think she's right. So I hope you'll appreciate that short article that I've assigned from Douglas. There are a few terms you should be familiar with. Decalogue, from Greek deca, 10, and logos, word. 10 words refers to what we sometimes call the Ten Commandments. They appear twice in the Torah, once in Exodus and again in Deuteronomy, and this is a pretty essential code and probably the most familiar legal code to a lot of people. After the Decalogue in Exodus, there is a section of material that biblical scholars call the Covenant Code, which may be a fairly early collection of legal material, and that is assigned in the reading for today, so you'll see that. And then what happens is in Deuteronomy chapters 12 through 20, which are not assigned for today, there is sort of repetition but also extensive revision of the covenant code. So we get a sense that the legal material, like our own material in our U.S. context, is being revised and rethought given new circumstances. So people familiar, for instance, with the whole concept of constitutional law and having to interpret the Constitution for circumstances that the framers of the Constitution did not envision, this is a little bit like what we have in the Deuteronomic Code. A lot of biblical scholars now believe that this section of Deuteronomy may have been what was discovered in the temple during the time of King Josiah, and that's a section that we'll read about in a couple of weeks. The story occurs in 2 Kings 22, and it's an interesting story. Some workers were cleaning up the temple. They found a book. They took the book to the king, or the high priest took it to the king, and the king said, go have the prophet evaluate it, and she did. The prophet's name was Huldah, and she said, this is the word of the Lord, and based on her affirmation, King Josiah instituted a nationwide reform and sort of reinstituted the principles that we find in Deuteronomy. So that's an interesting story for lots of reasons, and so I just wanted to sort of help you link that to some of the material you're reading for today. I've also asked you to skim the book of Judges. It's a difficult book in the sense of some of the most horrifying stories in the whole Hebrew Bible occur in this book, but you'll want to pay special attention to the stories about Rahab, because that will be the subject of your second exegesis exercise, and that story is found in chapters 2 and 6. So I hope these few comments will help contextualize the readings for you a little bit, and as always, I'm happy for you to have additional conversation with me via email. I know we're covering a lot of material fairly quickly. Okay, hope everybody has a good day.